Last night, The Late Show with Stephen Colbert turned into an unprecedented showdown when Denzel Washington, the legendary Oscar-winning actor, reduced the usually unflappable host to tears on live TV after a confrontation that left the audience stunned, the crew frozen and social media exploding with reactions nobody could have predicted. What began as a standard promotional interview for Washington's latest blockbuster transformed within minutes into one of the most jaw-dropping moments in late-night television history, flipping the script entirely as the host, not the guest, broke down emotionally before millions of viewers worldwide. Before we dive into how this wild saga unfolded, hit subscribe for more incredible celebrity showdowns you won't see anywhere else. The studio air still crackled with electric tension as Colbert, his eyes visibly wet, struggled to regain his composure. His signature smirk had vanished, replaced by a trembling lower lip that betrayed the emotional hurricane beneath his usually polished exterior. The audience, initially shocked into silence, now buzzed with conflicting reactions, some leaning forward in their seats, phones raised to capture the unprecedented moment, others shifting uncomfortably, witnessing something too raw for entertainment. We'll be right back after these messages, Colbert managed, his voice cracking on the final word as he adjusted his glasses with unsteady fingers, refusing to meet Washington's gaze. Washington remained perfectly still in his guest chair, his posture upright and dignified, hands calmly folded in his lap. Unlike the chaotic energy surrounding him, he emanated a powerful serenity, his expression neither triumphant nor apologetic, just profoundly present. The juxtaposition between his composed demeanor and Colbert's emotional unraveling only heightened the surreal nature of the moment. Producers frantically gestured from the wings, some making slashing motions across their throats, others whispering urgently into headsets. "Cut to commercial. Cut now." The command rippled through the control room as cameras continued rolling, capturing every excruciating second of Colbert's vulnerability. But it was too late. Across the country, viewers sat transfixed, watching the impossible unfold. The host, known for his razor-sharp wit and unshakable confidence, had been dismantled not through anger or accusation, but through something far more powerful. In the audience, a woman whispered loudly enough to be caught on mic. Did Denzel just make him cry? The question ricocheted through the studio, viewers at home leaning closer to their screens, social media notifications already lighting up phones nationwide. As the studio lights dimmed for the commercial break, Washington finally moved, reaching across to place a steady hand on Colbert's shoulder. The gesture, caught on camera before the feed cut, was neither condescending nor comforting. It was acknowledgement, one professional to another. The image froze on screens across America. Denzel Washington, perfectly composed, hand extended, toward a tearful Stephen Colbert, a visual that would dominate headlines for days to come. No one who tuned in that night for celebrity banter and promotional clips could have anticipated witnessing the complete reversal of late-night power dynamics, leaving everyone asking the same question. What exactly had Denzel Washington said? 30 minutes before the red recording light would illuminate, the backstage corridors of The Late Show hummed with the controlled chaos of pre-show preparations. In the guest preparation room, Denzel Washington sat perfectly still as a makeup artist applied the final touches to his face, her movements quick but precise under the harsh lighting. Unlike many celebrities who fidgeted or scrolled through phones during this ritual, Washington remained centered, his breathing measured, eyes focused on some distant point beyond the mirror. "Mr. Washington, we're so excited to have you on tonight," chirped a young producer who had entered, clipboard clutched against her chest like armor. Her smile stretched a bit too wide, her voice pitched slightly too high. "Stephen's really looking forward to discussing your new film." Washington's eyes shifted to meet hers in the mirror. "I appreciate that," he replied, his voice carrying that signature blend of gravel and velvet that had commanded screens for decades. Nothing more, nothing less. The producer's smile flickered momentarily before she pressed on. "So just to run through tonight's segment, we'll start with the clip from Sovereign Justice, then move into some fun banter about your stunt work, and Stephen might have a few topical questions." She paused, studying his reflection. You. No keeping it light, but giving viewers those viral moments they love. In the corner of the room, Washington's personal publicist shifted her weight from one foot to another. Viral moments, Washington repeated, the words flat, but somehow laden, with meaning. Not a question, not an agreement, simply an acknowledgement. The makeup artist stepped back, seemingly grateful to complete her work without being caught in the subtle current now flowing through the room. The producer glanced down at her clipboard, suddenly very interested in her notes. Stephen likes to push the envelope a bit, she continued, her tone now conspiratorial, as though they shared some inside understanding. It's what makes the show pop, but it's all in good fun. Washington turned from the mirror to face her directly, the full force of his presence no longer diffused by the reflection. I'm here to discuss my film, he said simply. That's my purpose tonight. The producer nodded quickly. Of course, absolutely. She backed toward the door, smile fixed. 5 minutes until we need you in the wings. As she disappeared, Washington's publicist approached. Denzel, I don't like their energy. They've got something planned. Want me to intervene? Washington straightened his already immaculate suit jacket, a gesture of preparation rather than nervousness. No need, he replied, his calm unshakable. I've been doing this a long time. In the control room, Colbert huddled with his head writer, chuckling over a freshly revised prompt card. Oh, he's not going to see this one coming, Colbert said, tapping the card. This'll be Twitter gold by morning. Welcome back, everybody. Colbert bounded onto the stage, riding the wave of applause with practiced ease, his lanky frame twisting in a signature little dance as the band played him in. The studio lights blazed, the audience's energy palpable. We've got a truly legendary guest tonight. You know him from, well, basically every incredible film of the past 30 years. Please welcome Academy Award winner Denzel Washington. Applause crescendoed as Washington emerged, his walk unhurried yet purposeful. No dance, no wave, just the confident stride of a man who had earned his place 1,000 times over. He greeted Colbert with a firm handshake, a polite nod, then settled into the guest chair, buttoning his jacket as he sat, a small deliberate gesture of formality. Denzel, Colbert began, leaning forward with his elbows on his desk, trademark smirk in place. So great to have you here. I have to ask, do you ever get tired of being, Denzel Washington, the man, the myth, the meme? A smattering of laughter rippled through the audience, slightly hesitant as though they weren't quite sure if this was the right tone. Can't say that I do, Washington replied, his voice measured, a small smile touching only the corners of his mouth. Been him my whole life. Seems to be working out so far. Colbert blinked, his rhythm momentarily disrupted by the lack of play-along enthusiasm. He recovered quickly. Well, in your new film, Sovereign Justice, you play a man who's basically the opposite of tired. A former Special Forces operator who comes out of retirement to battle corruption. Classic Denzel, saving the world again. The clip played on the monitors, showing Washington's character in an intense action sequence. When the screens returned to the studio, Colbert was ready with his next jab. So I noticed you do that thing with your walk again, Colbert said, rising to imitate an exaggerated swagger. That famous Denzel walk, is that just how you get to your mailbox every morning, or do you save it for when you're playing badasses? Several audience members laughed, but others shifted in their seats. Washington's expression remained pleasant, but something flickered behind his eyes. Not anger, but assessment. I just walk, Stephen, he replied calmly. The character walks, I walk, it's just walking. Just walking, Colbert repeated, stretching out the words as though they contained a joke. When no laughter followed, he glanced briefly toward his producers, off stage. Well, you do it better than anyone. A producer made a circular motion with her finger. Keep it moving. Let's talk about your directing work, Colbert pivoted, shuffling his note cards. You seem drawn to stories about... Actually, Washington interrupted, his voice soft but somehow filling the studio. Before we move on, I'm curious, what was it about my walk you wanted to highlight? The question hung in the air, simple but loaded. Several audience members leaned forward. Colbert's smile remained fixed, but his eyes darted sideways, sensing the first crack in his usual formula. Colbert's laughter filled the awkward silence, but it rang hollow against Washington's direct question. The host adjusted his glasses, a nervous tic he rarely displayed on camera. "Just having some fun, Denzel. That's what we do here. Keep it light, right?" Colbert glanced toward the audience, seeking their complicity, finding mixed reactions. Some nodded encouragingly. Others watched with the riveted attention reserved for approaching car crashes. "Of course," Washington replied, his smile genuine but his eyes unwavering. "Just curious about the comedic value." A producer frantically signaled from off stage, drawing a slash across her throat. "Move on, move on." So, Colbert pivoted sharply, shuffling his cards with exaggerated interest. "I've noticed you've been pretty quiet about the recent election. Most of Hollywood couldn't stop talking, but you kept a low profile. Any particular reason?" The question landed like a stone in still water. This wasn't on the pre-approved topic list, and everyone in the room knew it. The interview had just veered from promotional banter into personal politics, territory Colbert often navigated with politicians, but rarely with actors promoting films. Washington took a slow, measured breath. "Is that relevant to sovereign justice?" he asked, his tone conversational but firm. Colbert leaned forward, sensing blood in the water. "Well, your character fights corruption in government, stands up for truth. Seems pretty relevant to our current moment, doesn't it?" "Don't you think audiences will draw parallels?" From the front row, a young woman whispered audibly to her friend, "This is getting weird." Several audience members nodded in agreement. Others leaned forward, hungry for confrontation. "My character is fictional," Washington replied, each word deliberate. "He has clear enemies, clear objectives. Reality is more complex." He paused, then added, "But you're not really asking about my character, are you, Stephen?" The audience's collective intake of breath was audible. This wasn't the standard celebrity interview script. Washington wasn't playing along, wasn't offering the expected self-deprecating humor or political alignment signals that Colbert's audience had come to expect. Colbert's smile tightened. "I'm just saying, a man of your influence, people want to know where you stand." "On my film or on your politics?" Washington asked, still perfectly calm. A man in the third row whispered loudly, "Oh, snap." Someone else shushed him. Colbert's producer was now making frantic cutting motions, but the host ignored her. He sensed a viral moment within reach. "Just push a little harder." "Both," Colbert replied, his voice taking on an edge. "Because let's be honest, in today's world everything is political, even silence. Especially silence from someone like you." The emphasis on "someone like you" lingered in the air, carrying a weight that made several audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats. The interview had just crossed an invisible line, and everyone in the studio felt it. Washington's posture shifted subtly, not tensing, but rather settling more firmly into his seat, like a chess master committing to a decisive move. The studio lights seemed to intensify around him, as though even the technical elements of the show recognized a pivot point had been reached. "Someone like me," Washington repeated, the words hanging in the air. He nodded slowly, thoughtfully. "I'd like to understand what you mean by that, Stephen." Colbert's fingers drummed once on his desk, betraying a rare flash of uncertainty. A respected voice, an influential black actor, someone people listen to. Washington smiled, not the practiced smile of celebrity promotion, but something more, genuine and somehow more unsettling. "Interesting. So my obligation to speak comes from which of those categories exactly?" Offstage, a producer whispered urgently into her headset, "Get ready to cut to commercial. This is going sideways." Another shook his head, transfixed. "Wait. Let it play." Colbert tried to reclaim his footing with a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. "Come on, Denzel. You know how this works. You come on the show, we have some laughs, talk about the issues of the day. Is that what this is?" Washington interrupted, his voice measured but penetrating. "Because it feels like something else. It feels like you're using my film as a pretense to extract political declarations that you can turn into tomorrow's viral clip." A murmur rippled through the audience. Someone in the back let out a low, "Ooh, that's not," Colbert began. "It's a pattern I've noticed," Washington continued, his calm unbroken. "Not just with you, Stephen. This performative authenticity, where hosts pretend to have conversations, but are really fishing for moments they can package and sell, where guests are expected to validate the audience's existing beliefs rather than express their own complex thoughts. The audience's energy had shifted palpably. Several people nodded in agreement. The applause signs remained dark. "I respect your intelligence too much for that," Washington added, leaning forward slightly. "And I respect the audience too much as well." Colbert's smile had vanished entirely now, replaced by something that looked almost like genuine confusion. This wasn't in his playbook. A guest who neither stormed off in anger nor played along with the game. "So you're accusing me of—" "What exactly?" Colbert asked, an edge creeping into his voice. "I'm not accusing," Washington replied, his tone gentle, yet immovable. "I'm observing there's a difference. I'm observing that somewhere along the way, these interviews stopped being conversations and became performances. And I'm suggesting that perhaps we could try something different tonight." A woman in the front row spontaneously began to applaud. Others joined, until a wave of supportive clapping swept through sections of the audience. Colbert glanced out at them, then back at Washington, the first flicker of real concern crossing his face as he realized the audience, his audience, was siding with his guest. The applause faded into a silence so complete that the air conditioning's soft hum became audible throughout the studio. Colbert tugged at his collar, a gesture so uncharacteristic of his usual polished persona that several audience members exchanged glances. The control room had gone eerily quiet, producers frozen in place, no one daring to call for a commercial break. They were witnessing something too rare to interrupt. "Something different," Colbert repeated, attempting to regain his trademark sarcasm. "Like what, Denzel? A therapy session? A sermon?" He forced a laugh that landed flat in the hushed studio. Washington didn't immediately respond. Instead, he reached for the water glass on the small table beside him, took an unhurried sip, and set it down with deliberate care. The simple action somehow commanded more attention than any shouted retort could have. "Like a genuine exchange between two human beings," Washington finally said. "No agenda beyond that." Colbert's leg began to bounce beneath his desk, another tell from a man famous for his composed delivery. "That's what I do every night, with every guest," he insisted, his voice rising slightly. "You're suggesting I'm not authentic?" "I'm suggesting—" "We've all fallen into patterns," Washington replied. "You have a formula that's worked for you, I understand that. But formulas aren't truth." He gestured toward the audience. "These people don't tune in to see two men pretending to have a conversation, while one tries to trap the other into saying something that will generate clicks." A muscle twitched in Colbert's jaw. For the first time, his gaze darted toward the exit, as if calculating an escape route. "That's unfair," Colbert said, his voice strained. "I've built my career on speaking truth to power." "Have you?" Washington asked, the question hanging in the air, simple but devastating. "Or have you built it on performing a version of truth that your audience already agrees with?" The camera caught a close-up of Colbert's face, his eyes widening slightly, his lower lip giving an almost imperceptible quiver. It lasted only a second before he collected himself, but in that moment, millions of viewers glimpsed something they'd never seen before. Stephen Colbert, completely disarmed. "How you don't know me," Colbert said, his voice suddenly personal, stripped of its performance quality. "You don't know what I believe." "That's exactly my point," Washington replied, his tone gentler now, almost compassionate. "I don't. Your audience doesn't, because somewhere along the way the persona became the point." From the control booth, the director whispered, "Stay on Colbert's face, something's happening." And indeed it was. The host's practiced facade was crumbling in real time, the mask slipping to reveal something raw underneath, a mixture of anger, hurt, and most surprisingly, a glimmer of what looked like recognition. Colbert gripped the edge of his desk, knuckles whitening, as though physically anchoring himself against the tide of emotions threatening to sweep him away. The studio lights seemed to intensify, mercilessly illuminating every micro-expression that crossed his face. Gone was the practiced smirk, the arched eyebrow, the carefully calibrated reactions that had become his trademark over thousands of interviews. "You think you got me figured out," Colbert said, his voice unsteady, attempting one last counterattack. "Just another celebrity with opinions about how the media should work." Washington shook his head slowly. No, Stephen. I don't. Have you figured out that's not my place? He leaned forward slightly, his presence filling the space between them. But I do know what it costs to wear a mask every day, to perform rather than to be. Something in those words struck a nerve so deep that Colbert physically flinched. The audience, sensing the seismic shift happening before them, remained in stunned silence, witnesses to a moment of truth so raw it felt almost intrusive to watch. "You don't understand the pressure," Colbert whispered, his public persona now completely abandoned. "Every night they expect me to—" He stopped abruptly, as if suddenly remembering the cameras, the audience, the millions watching at home. "To perform exactly what they want to see," Washington finished for him. "To validate what they already believe, to never challenge the formula that brought you success." His voice carried no judgment, only recognition. "I understand that pressure better than you might think." Colbert's eyes glistened now, the studio lights reflecting off gathering moisture. A tear escaped, trailing down his cheek before he could catch it. He made a small, aborted gesture to wipe it away, then froze, realizing the futility of hiding what was happening. "What I've always respected about you, Stephen," Washington continued, his voice gentle but unwavering, "is your intelligence. Your actual intelligence, not the performance of it. That's why I agreed to come on your show. I thought perhaps we could have a conversation that honors the intelligence of everyone involved, including your audience." The camera caught Colbert's hand trembling as another tear fell, then another. Someone in the audience gasped audibly. The moment had transcended entertainment, becoming something else entirely, a human being breaking open in real time. "I can't," Colbert began, his voice cracking completely. He cleared his throat, tried again. "I don't know how to—" The words wouldn't come. Washington reached across the space between them, not to touch Colbert, but simply to offer his presence. "You don't have to perform right now," he said quietly. "Just be here, that's enough." The dam broke. Tears flowed freely down Colbert's face now, his shoulders shaking slightly with the effort of containing sobs. The control room erupted in panicked whispers, "Cut to commercial, cut now!" But no one moved to follow the command. They were all transfixed by the unprecedented vulnerability of a man whose career had been built on never showing exactly this. Within minutes of the broadcast cutting to an emergency commercial break, social media platforms ignited with activity so intense that several reported server overloads. Clips of Colbert's tears spread like digital wildfire, accompanied by hashtags ranging from charming Colbert breakdown to Denzel truth to humming real TV. The moment fragmented across millions of screens, each viewer interpreting what they'd witnessed through their own lens. "Denzel Washington just ended Stephen Colbert's whole career," one viral post declared, garnering 50,000 reshares in 20 minutes. Another countered, "Most authentic moment in television history. Colbert finally showed us the real human behind the desk." Backstage, chaos reigned. Network executives huddled in tight circles, their urgent whispers creating a hive-like buzz throughout the corridors. Publicists frantically worked phones. Producers stared at monitors replaying the footage, their expressions vacillating between horror and awe. In his dressing room, Colbert sat alone, tie loosened, staring at his reflection, a man trying to recognize himself after a mask he hadn't even acknowledged wearing had been gently removed on national television. A gentle knock interrupted his trance. "5 minutes until we're back," a production assistant said through the door, her voice unnaturally bright. Can you continue?" Colbert didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice carried a quality no one on staff had heard before, unscripted, unfiltered. "I'll be there." Meanwhile, Washington moved through the backstage area with characteristic calm, nodding respectfully to stunned crew members as his security detail guided him toward the exit. A senior producer intercepted him, her expression frantic. "Mr. Washington, we'd appreciate a statement before you leave. Something to help contextualize what just happened." Washington considered her for a moment. "What happened was a conversation between two human beings," he said simply. "Nothing more needs to be added." As his car pulled away from the studio, Washington's phone buzzed continuously with notifications. He ignored them all, gazing out at the city lights instead. The driver, sensing the weight of the moment, remained silent. Across the country, living, rooms buzzed with conversation. Viewers who had tuned in expecting light entertainment found themselves engaged in deeper discussions about authenticity, media, and the human cost of performance. The Late Show's YouTube channel crashed under the traffic as millions sought to rewatch what was already being called a pivotal cultural moment. "Did you see his face when Denzel said that thing about masks?" one viewer texted another. "It was like watching someone recognize themselves for the first time." When Colbert returned from the commercial break, viewers noted something different. His eyes still reddened but clear, his posture changed. He looked directly into the camera and began, "So that happened," drawing surprised laughter from the audience, and maybe it needed to. By morning, think pieces flooded every major publication. The Washington Effect, when authenticity meets performance, ran alongside Colbert's tears, vulnerability as the new cultural currency. But perhaps most telling was the quiet statement released by Washington's team. "Mr. Washington has no further comments on last night's interview, but wishes to express his respect for Mr. Colbert's professionalism and humanity." The narrative war continued to rage online, but something fundamental had shifted. In a media landscape built on performance, millions had glimpsed something else, something real.